So in the notes, it's asking us to find the perpendicular bisector of the line segment that joins A and B here. To do that, there's 3 steps. Back here on the top of your notes here it says, step 1, find the midpoint. Step 2, find the slope, then make it perpendicular so that we can be perpendicular to it and go through the midpoint, and then write our equation. So first thing we're going to do is find the midpoint. So that's an average. So we have an average of our x's, which is -3 and 5 divided by 2, comma, averaging our y's, 4 and 6 divided by 2. So the midpoint is going to be -3 and 5 is 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 and 6 is 10 divided by 2 is 5. So there's my midpoint. That's one of the points I'm going to need to work the problem out. I'm going to highlight it so I can keep it. I also need to find the slope. Slope formula, if you look back at the top, change in y over change in x. So for the slope, m for the slope, change in y, y2 is 6 minus y1 is 4 over x2 is 5 minus x1 is -3. Simplifying on the slope here, 6 minus 4 is 2 on the top. 5 minus the negative will be adding, so 5 and 3 is 8. That reduces to 1/4. This is the slope of the segment joining them, but we need to write the equation for the perpendicular bisector. So the midpoint is taking care of the bisecting, and the slope is supposed to take care of the being perpendicular. So we really don't want a slope of 1/4. We want the slope perpendicular to it. So what do we do to make the slope perpendicular? Reciprocal, and what else? And flip the sign. So it would be reciprocal would be 4/1 and make it negative. So the slope that we need to use is -4. So we've done 2 out of 3 of the steps so far. Third step is to plug in the slope and the point, the midpoint, into this formula for point slope form. The point that we are replacing, the midpoint, will go for x1 and y1, and the slope will be replacing the m. We will still have an x and a y, and then we will simplify it by solving for y. So we're going to say y minus the y from my midpoint, which is 5, equals the slope, which we decided would be -4, times x minus the x from the midpoint, which is 1. And then all we have to do is simplify that. So I'm going to distribute that -4. So on the left, it'll still be y minus 5. On the right, distributing, it will be -4x plus 4, because the -4 times the -1 is +4. And then just add 5 to get y alone. So y equals -4x plus 9. And that is the answer.